I know it's on the spot, but like, if you do Dust 2, like, can I get like early access as a streamer? You know what I'm saying? Like, could you hook me up? But yeah, outside of that,
we'll probably do it if Dusk 2 happens. We'll probably do an early access model, so you can get it in that way.
Sweet. Just cut that bit out, Mayo. No one heard that.
No, but Spud wants to feel special, man. Yeah, it is.
No, I'll cut that out, and then I'm gonna put that out. I'm gonna front load the podcast with that. That's how we're opening.
Oh man, that'll be the cold open.
Or both times he's muted and doesn't know it.
Damn it.
Or the slurp. Either way.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Unofficial Doom Eternal podcast. I'm under the Mayo, and I'm joined by the Spud Hunter.
Hello, it's me.
And Ketchup.
What's up, mate?
And we have a very special guest. We have the creator of Dusk and co-creator of Gloomwood, I believe.
Co-developer.
David Szymanski, everyone.
Hello.
This is really, really cool to have you on. I assume everybody here on this podcast has at least played Dusk. Am I right?
Of course.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
Very cool. Yeah, and I'm sure that many people who are going to be listening to this podcast have played it as well. And so, yeah, thanks a lot for agreeing to come on. And so I'd like to start. Is it David or is it Dave?
Either one. Usually David, because Dave Oshry is Dave, and I'm David. That's the way we, differentiate between the two of us. So probably David, just for consistency's sake.
Okay, it'll be David then. Does anyone want to start this off with a specific question?
The origin stories. What led you to spearhead the new wave of the old into the new blood of retro games?
Let's see. The short version is that Dusk had always, well, not always, but since I was like 14, I'd wanted to make a retro. Well, of course, at that time it wasn't really retro; it was just outdated sort of shooter.
Yeah.
And I had like a really bad PC, and I didn't have any consoles, so it was like, mid-aughts where Half-Life 2, Doom 3, Halo 2, and all that was like cutting edge, and I couldn't play any of that. I could just kind of look at it from afar. What I could play was old FPS shareware, like Doom, Duke Nukem 3D, and that sort of stuff. Depth Dwellers was actually one of them. I don't think anyone else has ever heard of Depth Dwellers.
No, I'm not familiar with that one.
Yeah, I know that LGR did a video on it, but I've never heard of anyone else playing it. It's not good, but that was one that I played the shareware version of. So, like, I was really into all of these games, and I was like, I really want to make one of these. Now, at the time, I was making games in QBasic, which was not really a language fitted for making really anything more advanced than like maybe a 2D sort of pixel scroller game at most. I made a bunch of like ASCII, like text-based games. I'm like, I want to try and make an FPS in this, and that didn't happen. It just wasn't going to happen. So,
did you make any progress like in your attempts using that software?
No, not really. No, I spent like several years actually trying to figure out how to do this, just off and on in my free time. I'm just not skilled enough a programmer to make that work. There were a few that people made in QBasic. One of them, like the really big impressive one I remember, was called MUX, and it was like a proper Wolfenstein 3D type game, which for QBasic was really impressive. And the way they achieved that was actually I think they used some, was it C or C++? They kind of cheated and used either C or C++ code for some of it. But so no, I didn't really make any progress on that. But I spent a lot of time, doing the young teenager thing of making, a bunch of design documents and drawing levels and stuff like that. And the important thing is that at that time I came up with the title Dusk. And so fast forward to like years later when I'd gone through college, blah blah blah, and moved from QBasic to Game Maker, did some 2D stuff that no one's ever played. And I guess I did finally do like a Wolfenstein type game called Pit, which is actually bundled in with Dusk if you look in the goodies folder.
Huh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's just this little Wolfenstein 3D type game. I started working with Unity and made a series of like narrative-driven horror games that were moderately successful. They were successful enough that I was kind of doing game development full time. But I got myself burnt out working too hard and just like doing burnout stuff basically. And so I took some time to just sort of play around with like, what do I want to do next? I don't think I want to do just like jump into doing another horror game next. I want to take some time and figure out what I want to do. And I started messing around with a prototype that eventually turned into a retro FPS, because in all the years since, trying to do that in QBasic, I'd always still wanted to make one and still planned on maybe someday I'll do this. And kept kind of waiting for some sort of like, I not really a resurgence to happen, but I was like waiting for someone else to make that sort of game. I think the closest that really happened was like the 2013 Rise of the Triad reboot.
Okay.
And like there was like nothing else that I felt was really scratching that itch for me that was like new. And so I'm like, well, maybe I'll just do that then, since no one else is making it. And it just so happened that I got that idea about around the time where I think everyone else got the idea, or was starting to get the idea. It's just that Dusk happened to be one of the earlier ones that was announced. And yeah, so I worked on that for a while, did a little like and it wasn't even really a proof of concept prototype. It was like just a whole bunch of like interaction and like mechanics and stuff in like a dev test room that I ended up sending to Dave Oshry just on a whim, hoping maybe he would like tweet about it or something. And instead he was like, "Hey, do you want us to publish your game?" I'm like, maybe. And so then Dusk happened.
And so, how soon after that were you putting out episode 1?
It was a while. I had always I before that point it worked relatively fast, like on the horror games. I did several of them within a year's time. Now, granted, they were small and short, but Dusk I had figured starting out was going to be maybe a year project. And that turned into like 3 years, I think, once it was a New Blood game, and it got bigger and stuff. And I think the time from, I don't remember how long it was. It was a while. We did the pre-alpha as like after our initial reveal, we released the pre-alpha as like, I think we started out with it as a pre-order bonus, and then I don't remember how long after that. It was at least months after that we decided to transition over to early access with the episode 1 release. Can't remember exactly how long it was though. I have a terrible sense of time, and that whole period just like blurs together anyway, because it was just crazy, like all the time.
I imagine a lot of stress. Yeah.
Yeah, that was just a crazy time. I don't like I can't remember how much time was between highlights during that. It's just sort of a blur.
What's your favorite color? No, just kidding. What would be, just to like bookend like the origins, what would be like your biggest inspiration game? Because I know you said like, you know, you came out of the tail end of like Half-Life 2, Doom 3 and all that era, but like what was the game that made it all like go together for you? You were like, oh, I want to do this because, you know, like for me it was like Quake, you know what I mean? Like without
Yeah.
like hands down. Like what was yours?
Well, way back when this all started, when I was like a young teenager, it was actually another game very few people have heard of called Chasm the Rift. It was basically a Ukrainian Quake. It was a Ukrainian Quake clone on one of the weirdest engines I think I've ever seen. It was like midway between the Doom Alpha and Quake.
Some kind of source leak or something. Yeah,
it was absolutely bizarre. But that was like one of the first that kind of got the whole thing started. I ran into it on a shareware demo disc. And I was like infatuated with it, and that was like that was the first game that I ever bought with my own money too. I think the first shooter that I ever finished, it was a bad first shooter to finish, because the ending of that game is just one of the most disappointing endings like you can imagine. But that was really what got everything started. That and Quake. It was like the visual style and atmosphere that really intrigued me at that point. I'd always, like, even starting out, I always wanted to make something that like looked and felt like Quake and Chasm, you know, with that like gothic low res look.
Is that what you started with? Like when you started making Dusk, did you immediately start thinking, how is it going to look? Or did you start with gameplay mechanics first? Like what's
No, it's weird because every game that I do pretty much starts that way. It starts with how does it look?
Okay.
Which is strange because I don't think many people would say that I'm like that skilled of a visual artist when it comes to games, but it's like it's really important for me to get the look of a game figured out like first.
Okay.
So yeah, that was how Dusk, even you know, fast forwarding ahead to when Dusk proper started. It started out with me just like one day deciding I really want to make a low poly like Quake shotgun, and just put that on like a first person character just for fun, just because it seemed like a fun thing to do for me. And yeah, I spent a bunch of time then just figuring out how the game would look. So at that time, it seems weird to say now, and it's not even that much, you know, not that much time has passed, relatively speaking, between that and now. But like at that time, there weren't really any other like low poly, low res games of that type. There weren't any other Quake looking games, like Quake looking indie games. There was like Strafe. That was about it. So I didn't really have. Now, of course, you would just look at like, okay, what's, you know, Wrath or you know, whatever. What are these games doing with their textures and models and stuff? And I'll just do that because people like that. There was nothing like that. I just kind of had to guess. Well, what, you know, first of all, how do you do this? There weren't really any tutorials for like, here's how you do Quake style texture mapping or things, you know, on things like that. I remember at one point I was actually looking at the actual, you know, like Quake enemy textures and animations and stuff like that, just to be like, okay, try and you know, reverse engineer what was their workflow for doing this. And ultimately what ended up happening, I think that, well, first of all, I was learning how to do like proper modeling and texturing and animations and level design and all of this stuff basically as I went with Dusk. I'd never done it before.
That's
I'd done
wild.
You know, these horror games where yeah, I did these horror games where it's like the levels were tiny and were basically either made out of Unity primitives or were like meshes, like one room meshes in Blender. So, you know, and I never really done any enemy models before. I'd never really done even any proper texturing. The closest I'd done is maybe some like taking a photo and just sort of pushing a UV map onto it. So and I was learning all this as I went, and also trying to reverse engineer how you would even do this workflow, and not really knowing what people would want from it. Like, what I kind of shot for like as authentic as I could make it. I did a lot of looking at. Well, I think one of the mistakes I made is I did a lot of looking at a whole bunch of different games from different times. Like, so I'd look at Doom, I'd look at Quake, I'd look at Half-Life, I'd look at Deus Ex and all this stuff, and I just sort of take visual elements from each one that I liked. And they could be tiny things, just like, oh, I like how this weird board particle system looks in Deus Ex. I'll kind of copy that. Or I see that in Doom, this is like a photo source texture, and it's right next to a hand-painted texture, and that works in Doom, so I'll use that also. And I took it from all these sources and to try and make something that looked kind of authentic to this hazy, nebulous era of games that actually kind of spanned like almost a decade.
Yeah, and there was so much change in those years.
Instead of just focusing on like, okay, this game is going to look like Quake, and so we were just referencing Quake and stuff around Quake's time. And so I think that ended up with an art style that in some ways is maybe a little too rough for what people actually wanted. I think looking back now, it's obvious what people actually want is they want a sort of sanitized, tweaked up version of what Quake looked like. They don't want necessarily all the rough edges. And I kind of wanted to put in the rough edges, in addition to also, really not being that skilled as I was doing this and kind of trying stuff just to see what would work. I can't remember what the original question was. I don't know if I answered it or not. I'm sorry.
I just, I'm freshly woken up, so I don't even remember what the question was.
Okay,
Well,
fair enough.
I know Spud's question was basically like, what was the game that kind of?
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
This is it. And to be fair, you answered it instantly.
Yeah.
Went on a tangent, yeah. It was Quake and stuff, and then once I got to in terms of like gameplay, then once I got to actually working on Dusk, honestly, the primary one was Doom. Quake was like the primary. The Quake and Chasm, they kind of go together because they basically look the same. They were the primary aesthetic inspiration, and then Doom was the primary gameplay inspiration.
I can
and
see
then
that.
I added in a bunch of like immersive sim stuff just because I'm insane.
Do you see yourself releasing a sequel anytime soon around the corner? Because I still find like you guys are, like as a company, as a group, you're pumping out some really, like, you're acquiring some really good IPs at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them I didn't like. When Ultra Kill came out, I didn't even realize it was you guys. Like, I was like, oh fuck, this is sick, and then it's like, oh shit, it's new play. So it's like, you guys are expanding, but every time you guys are brought up, it's always Dusk. They go Dusk. You gotta play Dusk.
Well, that was the thing that put New Blood on the map, kind of put me on the map at the same time.
Yeah.
That's what most people associate us with. And I mean, a sequel is definitely something that, like, probably in the future, but not right now.
I imagine it would be a lot of work because, like, you don't want to just,
they
make
have to
more.
raise the bar down.
Yeah, you don't want to just
The
make
graphics
more
have to go
Dusk
next level.
levels.
They're going to use Unreal Engine. It's going to have ray tracing.
Yeah, we're just gonna go. It'll go full like
Hollywood actors and voice actors.
Yeah. We had who's the guy in Death Stranding? Kojima loves.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Norman Reedus.
I think a sequel will probably happen in the future, but right now it's just like, well, first of all, I used up a whole bunch of my ideas making Dusk. Dusk was like a long time in the making. There was all this like built up ideas and concepts and stuff that I put into Dusk that are now just used up. And And second, I don't want to just rush one out, and like I don't want to. I know what happened with like the Banner Saga, for instance. The first one came out, was a huge hit, and then they put the second one out really quickly, and like no one really knew about it. And then they put the third one out, and it was the same deal. No one like it was like they were too quick. I don't want to do that with Dusk, and I don't want to put out a sequel when it's like now the market for retro throwback shooters is kind of getting a little crowded. There's a bunch of people doing them. I'd like to just take the time to let it happen naturally. Like Dusk originally happened because I felt like I had something to put out and show people that was worth it. You know, it was this thing, like this type of game that I had been wanting to see throwback to for years, and I felt like, well, if I want this, probably there are other people out there that want it also. I think a sequel to Dusk, I'd like to be a similar thing where it's like it's something I feel like I can do that's like new and different and interesting that I want, and probably a lot of other people want also.
I think it's a really interesting point, and often, you know, personally, I've always believed it's one of the best approaches to creating stuff. You know, whether it's games, whether it's videos, you know, no matter what, it's like if it's something that you really want to exist, there's a chance other people also feel the same way, and then when it all comes together at the end, it's a very satisfying feeling, you know.
Yeah.
And yeah, because I really enjoyed Dusk, and it fell at kind of like an interesting point for me because. Yeah, because growing up, I played console FPS, you know, because, you know, shared household, 3 brothers. It was much more ideal for our mum to get us like an N64 instead of, you know, a PC to share or something.
Right.
You know, it's like multiplayer, I think, was the big thing. But it was so I'd growing up, I'd missed the wave of like PC retro FPS. Well, at the time, just FPS, right? So I never got to like experience a new game of that style when I was growing up, like everyone else did. So when Dusk comes out and I've got like a proper PC and everything, and it's like, oh crap, I can play this game that really does feel like, you know, a much older title now while everyone else is. And it was a really like hard to explain, but it was quite a nice feeling to like actually be a part of that wave for like the first time. It was a very nice feeling because I grew up like Turok and all the classic kind of more, I think, more popular console FPS. So you know, Doom and Quake and Turok were like my 3, and Dusk really did kind of like hit the nail on the head. It was a really fun experience, mostly because of the movement. I found, you know, the controls, the smoothness of it.
I spent a bunch of time on that. That was kind of the I felt like movement, because I've always really liked how speedy you are in Doom, and I always felt like I felt like the movement was going to be just as important as the shooting. Like, it's like you should be able to be in a room without any guns and without any enemies or anything and have it still feel good to just move around. Which I guess paid off because a lot of people like how it feels to move around.
Yeah, for sure. No, I mean, this does open up to a rather, I mean, for me, I think it's quite an interesting question. Is that, so you mentioned earlier that a lot of Dusk you were kind of learning as you went, right? A lot of the processes. So I guess the first question is how much time, I guess it's double-barreled, how much time did it take to really, you know, nail the movement? And also, how did you get it so accurate, considering, again, it was very much kind of just figure it out as you go? Because for this to be one of your first entries into it, I mean, like, that's, for me, really impressive to hear, because it was very accurate, you know, and it is, in my opinion, the best part of the game is the controls. Like, it feels so smooth.
Oh, thank you. It took a little, like, at least a month or 2 just spent not just tweaking the movement, but like tweaking stuff related to, you know, game feel. And there was some feedback from friends and like both of my brothers are also game developers, so you know, I got some feedback on it. And most importantly, what I did is I would literally just like boot up Doom Quake or whatever. Basically, I cross-referenced a bunch of different games, a bunch of different, like 90s games, and I just boot them up and move around for a bit and kind of take note of like how fast do you accelerate, how fast do you deaccelerate, what happens when you press the keys and stuff, and I just cross-reference that with the Dusk prototype. Sometimes I'd like alt tab into Doom and move around for a bit, and then alt tab out to Dusk and move around and just like compare them, and then tweak accordingly.
One thing that made me fall in love with Dusk is the bunny hopping, which doesn't, I guess it doesn't really function as true bunny hopping. It's more just like timing a jump and getting some acceleration from it. And I guess, was that a conscious decision to say, hey, we want to take the awesome speedrunning style of movement of Quake and make it easy and understandable for anyone playing this game so that they can just jump into it and have fun? Because that's how it felt to me.
Yeah, pretty much. So the bunny hopping honestly only came about because Doom 2016 came out as like while I was working on the early stages of Dusk and was, a huge hit. And I was like, okay, well, I'm going to have some way that Dusk is not just crappier looking Doom 2016. What can I add in that Doom 2016 doesn't have? One of those was bunny hopping. I'm just like,
wow,
it doesn't have that. Why don't I have that in? Problem, I don't actually know how to bunny hop. I have never been able to bunny hop.
I can't do it either.
Yeah, I just can't. So I did a much simplified version because I'm like, well, I don't know how to do. I'll just do something like simple that it's just in there for fun. And it was kind of like a somewhat more complex version of the bunny hopping in Painkiller. Painkiller, it's the most simple like it could possibly be, which is just you press jump rapid and you bunny hop. So with Dusk, it was like it's that, except you have to be holding a direct strafe key. So little bit like there's a little bit of the sort of scent of actual bunny hopping in there because strafe keys are involved.
Right. You have that second level. That's what I really like, is that first level starts, it's small, introduces you to the game, and then the next level you're on that ranch. And it's such a huge open space. And that's immediately where you can start experimenting with the bunny hopping and seeing how the movement feels. It was really good placement there.
Yeah, thanks. It turned into a much bigger element of Dusk than I started out intending it. Like even now, I don't bunny hop in that game quite as much as other people. I still do it, but usually I use it intermittently as like a deliberate thing rather than just bunny hopping all the time. But like as we went on with Dusk, it was like it was obvious that Dusk was more fun the sort of faster and crazier you went. It had started out being like originally way back at the beginning, Dusk was going to have hit scanners and it was going to be a little bit slower paced and it was going to be more like I'd say a build engine game.
Two weapon limit, hiding behind cover, recharging your shield.
No, not to that extent, but it was going to be a little more like say Blood, where you have to the combat is fast paced, but you have to be very conscious of like your line of sight and stuff like that. But then as we were working on prototyping and I'm going back and forth with Dave about stuff, it just sort of turned into like, this is more fun if it's more arcadey. Like the sort of game we're making is not that, is not slow paced. It's like, it's fun if you're bunny hopping, if you're going off jump pads, if you're just going nuts.
Did the jump pads come before or after Doom 2016?
Those actually came before. Those were always going to be in there.
Cool.
Because of Rise of the Triad, and because I just think jump pads they're fun and they're easy to implement. And actually, they ended up being one of the most fun parts of Dusk combat. I think it's like if you add in jump pads to an arena, it dials the fun. It like immediately dials the fun up. to have those. I think we actually used them even more than Doom 2016 did,
I think
if
you
I
did.
remember correctly, because they're just fun.
I remember a lot of Doom 2016 players actually, with the kind of Quake cons before Doom Eternal, when there was still kind of those almost like clan tournaments, where they would do one big tournament for Doom 2016 a year. It would happen at QuakeCon. Everyone would get together, all the different clans like Zoo, New Classic, the PC hardcore, and they'd all meet up and they're just playing these tournaments. I remember, I'm pretty sure I remember Dusk being, shown off around that time as well, because and every Doom player that was at QuakeCon would always go and play Dusk. And they'd be like, "Man, you got to play this Dusk game, man. It's sick." Like everyone was really attached to it. Because there's a lot
we showed off at QuakeCon. I think 2016 was actually the first year that when we like revealed it at QuakeCon, if I remember correctly. And yeah, everyone was always like really into it. It was funny because first year, excuse me, again, it was like us and Strafe. Strafe was like, for a while, it was like the Dusk competition. It was gonna actually starting way out. It was like, or starting initially out. It was like, okay, well, Strafe's obviously going to be the big hit, and Dusk is going to be the little underdog that maybe has a cult following, and that happened differently than I expected. But first QuakeCon was like, it was like Dusk and Strafe, and there were people passing the booth and like giving Dusk second looks, being like, what the heck, it looks like Quake 2. Like, what is the... And of course now, if you were to show something like that at a convention, no one would bat an eye. It's like, oh yeah, there's one of those retro FPSs. It's really funny how that how quickly that changes in just a few years' time.
Yeah, within like 2 years, really, right?
Yeah, it's I know that like you started out saying Dusk spearheaded the resurgence, which I guess in some ways is true, but I feel uncomfortable like taking credit for that, because I think honestly a lot of us just had the same idea at the same time. I think Doom 2016 probably did a lot for like inspired a lot of people in that direction too. And Dusk just happened to be really early on that front, which is what we're trying to do with Gloomwood also. Like, we all feel that immersive, like indie immersive sims are the next miniature zeitgeist that's going to happen, and we're hoping Gloomwood could be out in front of that, because there's a bunch of other ones that are kind of in development.
So there's you see other games coming out in that genre as well.
Yeah, it's mostly small ones right now, like small one person, tiny indie efforts. But we feel it seems like that's where the mindset is moving right now. There's a lot more discussion about immersive sims than, well, even just like a year ago, no one knew what, like, I get questioned, what the heck is an immersive sim? Like, well, it's like Thief, Deus Ex, and System Shock 2 and those sort of games. And now it's like a meme where people are like, "Oh, is Red Dead 2 an immersive sim?" It's like that's where the discourse is now. So, yeah, I think it's going. I don't know how big that sort of resurgence is going to be, because the immersive sims genre is cursed. But I think it's going to happen, and we're trying to make sure Gloomwood is one of the, maybe not one of the early ones to come out, but one of the early ones on people's minds.
Yeah, kickstart it off.
Yeah,
I think there's like a healthy community building up all around it. I mean, just look at the meme culture that's developed around all of it as well. Like Kino Fabino, that's just insane.
Yeah, it really is. Especially like thinking back when Dusk started, it was like, well, even when Dusk started with New Blood, it was basically just me and Dave, and there wasn't really any sort of culture or fan base surrounding it. And then just within a few years' time, it's grown into this whole big community thing.
I had a question about the jump from episode 1 to episode 2. I think, I mean, you have to know yourself is huge, right?
Yes, it is.
It is.
Yeah.
I mean, it's massive. Like, I love Dusk beginning to end. My favorite is probably episode 2, just because I just really love that opening military base so much, and I love how it starts going underground, and then everyone's dead, and then you get the Wendigos, right? The invisible enemies. I love the flow of episode 2, but I love the other episodes as well. But I'll sometimes I'll recommend Dusk to an old friend of mine that I used to play old FPS with, and he's more into Destiny and stuff like that. And I was like, dude, you gotta check out Dusk. It's really great. And he couldn't really get into it because he wasn't really into episode 1. And I was like, dude, if you're not into episode 1, just jump to episode 2, because the game just goes batshit crazy, right? And episode 1 feels more like a consistent tone. Everything kind of feels like it's, woods, farm, mines, and then episode 2, I mean, is military base and the infamous laboratory, and there's just, it goes in so many interesting directions. And was that a conscious decision? Was that you saying, I want episode 2 to stand out from episode 1, or was it just like a natural evolution? You just found yourself a lot more confident after episode 1 was finished?
I mean, it was it was kind of all of that, actually. So episode 1 was like, that's sort of was always the initial, well, the starting out with, making Dusk, and it's just started out as sort of a prototype, and then very quickly I decided this will be a retro FPS. And very early on, I figured I wanted to do 3 episodes, and I wanted to do, first episode is like woods, rural. Second episode is like stalkery, sort of industrial. Third episode is just complete insanity, in another dimension. I always knew I wanted to do that. But then, as I said, I was learning all this as I went, and we actually worked on Dusk levels pretty much in order, with a few exceptions. For the most part, I, would do like level 1, finish level 1, go on to level 2. Like, it was all like through designed like that. Which is a blessing and a curse. The blessing part is that by the time you get to like episode 3 and stuff, the game doesn't really peter off. It's not like it's actually not very authentic in that way, because if you play Doom or Quake or really anything from that period, they're very front loaded. You have like the vertical slice first episode, and then after that is like
hit or miss.
So that doesn't really happen with Dusk. It's like, for the most part, the game's getting better as you go, and it's getting bigger and crazier and stuff. On the other hand, the stuff in episode 1 is pretty rough and pretty amateurish. Not just not just compared with what other more experienced, level designers could do, but also just compared with where the game goes. If you go to if you jump into a level in episode 3, there's a lot more detail to it. I'm a lot more confident with like how I do the geometry and everything. And as an episode 1, it's like I have no idea what I'm doing. I'm just trying stuff and hoping it works. So yeah, we did episode 1 and released that as early access, and everyone loved it. This was a very useful thing for Dusk, and actually has informed Dave in how he does like New Blood games since then, which is that getting community feedback with finished chunks, releasing finished chunks to the community to get feedback for, and having that inform subsequent chunks that you finish is really useful. And that was really good for Dusk, because we got episode 1 out in early access. Well, even before that, we got like the pre-alpha out as a pre-order bonus, so we got feedback from that informed episode 1. And then episode 1 was out for a while before episode 2 came out, so there was a lot of time to get tons of like community feedback from people playing episode 1 and getting like ideas of what they liked, what they didn't like, and et cetera, and that all went on to inform episode 2, where it's like, okay, episode 2 has to be better, and all the, we want to make it better. We don't want to just do episode 1 again. We want to address all the concerns and make it more impressive and all this stuff. And as I'm going through designing all the levels, in order, it was just sort of natural to want to try new, crazier stuff instead of all of episode 2 could have just been like the first level in episode 2, where it's just big military base. But as I'm going, it's like, well, I'm bored of doing just the industrial base. I want to put a twist on it. So then you get to level 2, where I'm experimenting with horror elements.
Yeah, the tone shift 3, is so memorable.
Yeah, that was actually came from inspired by the Haunting level in Blood, where it had this. I'd played it in the when I was younger, and had this experience where I'd gone through and just hadn't encountered any enemies somehow, and it was really creepy, and so I wanted to reproduce that. But and so going, and then it's okay, well, level 3, let's try doing some actual sun outside, this big open outside area. That's going to be a new interesting thing. Let's try having you go into this. It was just trying new crazy ideas to keep things fresh and keep things more interesting than just, here is our aesthetic for this episode, all of these levels are going to be this. And then of course that kind of went too far, because by the time got to episode 3, it was how are we going to one up episode 2 after all the stuff that episode, you've literally gone through this giant people munching machine, and then you've gone up into the sky where there's a big industrial Tower of Babel sort of weird thing in the clouds, and it's just now what? We've already episode 3 was supposed to be the one where weird stuff happens. Finally, weird stuff has already happened, so now we need to do even weirder stuff. And that's why episode 3 then just goes completely batshit insane.
But it works to the game's benefit. It really does.
Yeah, it was very stressful to try and do, and very exhausting. Because I was really burnt out even when we started episode 3, and then it had to be the biggest and best episode. So by the time I finished episode 3, it was just I'm just done. Honestly, I'm still recovering from that even 2 years later.
Yeah, no,
but
there will not be a Dusk. There will not be a Dusk 2 in the next 6 months. I imagine the whole process.
Not.
I mean, you said that you came up with the name in mid 2000s or something.
Yeah, when I was 14 or 15.
Wow, that's insane, man. Yeah, just take a breath, relax. We don't need Dusk 2 right now.
Breathe it in.
Yeah, I'm trying to just do. I'm struggling to figure out what life after Dusk is like.
Well, you're doing well with the collabs as well. You're working with, you're doing the Gloomwood and all that. It's pretty sick.
Yeah, I'm keeping myself busy on stuff.
Yeah. And you can sort of, bask in all the glory of your efforts as well. It's paid off,
Yeah, which I should feel okay doing. I'm bad at I'm bad at resting. I'm very type A. I'm doing Gloomwood. I'm doing some, DreadX stuff. I just released an album a month ago.
Awesome.
I'm doing all this stuff, but my brain is still telling me I'm not doing enough.
Where can people check out your album?
Oh, let's see here.
Bandcamp?
Yeah, it's on Bandcamp. Let me make sure I have giving you the right address. Yeah.
Well, for the podcast, you got it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's David Szymanski at davidszymanski.bandcamp.com.
Okay, great. Yeah, everyone go check that out.
Yeah, I've got actually a bunch of music on there. So I'm doing all this stuff, but one thing I'm struggling with is feeling oh, well, I need to do the next big thing, or else I'm gonna become washed up and irrelevant, which is not healthy. But
that's all relative. That's all relative.
It's sort of like how in in romantic movies, it like gets to the end and they have their like first kiss or whatever, and then the movie's done, and it never goes into like what is 10 years of marriage like down the road.
Yeah.
That's sort of kind of what it's like with video game success. Now, mind you, I am not at all complaining or being like woe is me or anything. I am very lucky. Yeah, I'm very lucky with how Dusk is done, and I'm very thankful for it. But there are challenges that come with that, I would say.
Well, that's a real concern, man. Like, I'd use the analogy of, say, you're in a rock band, right?
Mm-hmm.
You've just come out, you're a punk rock band. You've just come out with a punk rock title, which when you think about it, you're doing an indie dev shooter, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you've come out with a punk rock album and it's actually got some mainstream success. Yeah?
Yeah.
And now you've got to come out with the second album.
Yeah. And also just figure out, like, I'm a very like creative work focused person. I kind of live in my own world, and like the stuff I'm working on basically consumes my whole life. So I started, you could say I started quote unquote Dusk when I was 14. Now, of course, I wasn't working on it at that time, but it's like all of the, these ideas and the dreams and everything that went into Dusk were all a huge part of just my almost daily life. And that's all gone. It's sort of like, in some ways, it's like losing something. You've lost that that drive for bringing this thing into the world that you're like imagining and dreaming about, because it's done. You did it. You brought the thing into the world. It's like I don't ever have to dream again about how cool it would be if I made a retro FPS. I did it. That's a big mental shift. Like now when I go back and play Doom 64, for instance, which is something I've been playing off and on recently, in previous years, I'd be playing that and I'd be taking all these mental notes like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. This is so cool. This is, it'd be really cool to try and emulate this in a game, etc. And now it's like, well, I already did that, and that zeitgeist has already happened, and it's in some ways it's like already peaking. And so like I can't like approach stuff that same way anymore. I have to like figure out how do you play Doom 64 or whatever and not have that just be you grabbing ideas for a future retro FPS. Or that's just an example of, it's like there's a change, and also there's a change in like previous to this I was like, I'm the little underdog nobody knows about. Basically anything is possible, like I release Dusk and it does horribly and no one plays it. Well, that's not like a down, that's not like a failing, that's just status quo for how my career has been. But now that Dusk is out and it did great, now it's like, oh, okay, now there's expectations, and now it's like there's this bar I have to meet with stuff. It's not just little guy David making random crap and releasing it. It's like now I have a fan base and stuff that I don't want to disappoint. I guess it's kind of going off on a tangent, but just to say that like it's interesting how there's all these challenges that come with having a success like that. And again, not complaining at all. I wouldn't want it any other way. It's just that there are challenges associated with it. It's not all just and he lived happily ever after.
No, that's very philosophical. That can apply to pretty much a lot of any success in life.
I'd imagine. Yeah, it probably does.
You sound like you've got your head on your shoulders, so I feel like you'd actually work it out. It's just that you do what a lot of people don't do, which is actually think about the moment. You know what I mean? Some people just go through the motions, and that way it's like a bit of a catch-20, 2020, because they can sort of like, you can either get caught up in it all and lose focus, or you actually refocus on things and actually go in the right direction you want to take things.
Yeah.
I think because the basis of this podcast is off Doom. I think where you're going sort of has some correlations with, say, like how id Software did with Doom 2016. They were very experimental with that, and then they sort of hit gold with it, but they didn't want to do the same thing twice, right?
Yeah.
So they had to evolve on that. And I think you sound like you're self-aware, you know, so you will know that you'll have to evolve on things. I don't think it's a huge pressure if you just give yourself time, because it's like, you have the people behind you, you know, so they're not going anywhere. Like, people come back, people come and go when it comes to, like, you know, notoriety and all that whatnot, you know.
Yeah,
like I come from like a streaming background, and it's like, if you just take time off, like you just take 2-3 weeks off, it's like in the back of your mind, it's just people forget about you. But the people that are going to support you and they're actually going to stick around no matter what, they're going to stick around. So if that makes sense. And it's the same with your supporter base, you know, like, let's just say your next title is not the Dusk sequel, but it's like a little bit of a bit of a sleeper hit you're working on or something like that. It'll attract a new audience and your hardcores. You know, maybe it wouldn't have the hardcore Dusk people behind it, but it will bring in other people, you know? So
yeah, that's true. I think you're right about that. It's mostly just a mental thing. Like, I know I don't have, there's, you know, there's no one externally being like, oh, you better come out with the next, you know, giant hit, indie hit, or we're not going to like you anymore. It's just a mental thing. But yeah, I think you're probably right. It's like,
what you do has substance, brother. Do you know what I mean? There's so many people out there that do shit that's just fucking, sorry for language, Mayo. You can bleep this out on the podcast. There's
Well,
I was
gonna mute your channel for the entire
thing. There's so many, like, think of like YouTube stars that do meme based stuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
and
it's like
then,
flash in a pan. So,
yeah, and then you read up on, like, they have some interview years later, and it's like they never valued what they did. They didn't understand that they were just going through the motions, and then they quit their studies or their job or their real passion because they were XYZ. There was this, you know, I forgot her name, but the obsessed girlfriend, the lady behind that meme. Yeah, she ended up doing like a bit of a mini documentary recently where she had all this success being basically an internet celebrity based on that meme, and she's going on TV shows and this, and she's earning actually real good money. But then she started getting depression because she didn't know what to do with it next, because she wanted to be a quote unquote like an internet influencer and a celebrity with this stuff. But then she just felt like she didn't know where to take it, you know?
Okay, yeah.
But like what you've got, you know, you'll always be able to build upon it, because it's not stuff that's just based on, you know, superficial stuff. You know, it's like what you've done is actual, like, a craft, you know, and it can evolve and whatnot. You know, it's not based on the, you know, a meme.
I'd like to expand on that. I think that what also gives me confidence in it is the way that Dusk so confidently pushes with its level concepts. There's so many. I've played other retro first-person shooters, and honestly, usually within about 20 or 30 minutes, I feel like I've seen it all. Like, I feel like they've made their retro FPS, and like, this is how it is, and then it's just level after level of that. And with Dusk, it just feels like, especially starting with episode 2 and into episode 3, it feels like every level is like a new world. And I don't know, I guess just it seems like you really let your ambition and your imagination just kind of go wild when you make something, and that's going to take you to good places in the future. And that's why if I hear a new first-person shooter or a new whatever game from the creator of Dusk, I would get a lot more excited about that than hearing that a new game has come out from the creator of whatever other retro FPS game, because I feel like Dusk has something a lot more special to it.
Thank you. That's really cool to hear. Yeah, I think you're all right. It's like, I'm honestly in a pretty good position as far as like the fan base that I have and stuff. Like, I think I'm very lucky with that. Probably, you know, whatever I decide to do next. Well, I know whatever because like people followed, you know, some people followed me even into like the DreadX stuff, playing those little games that I did. Yeah, which I'm very grateful for, having, you know, that fan base of people who are going to be there for whatever I do next, probably, even if it takes a little while.
you've got Dave hustling other titles as well under the same
Yes.
banner, so you've got a lot of cross pollination. So I genuinely believe you're gonna be alright. There's no I wouldn't feel the weight of Dusk on your shoulders as much as it probably would feel heavy on you at times, because you're always going to have that cross pollination with the other titles and the other communities behind it.
Very true.
So not saying you're living off other people's successes or whatever, but it's sort of like everyone's supporting each other.
Yeah. No,
And-
that's really important. That exactly as you say, the cross pollination element is that Dave's actually pushed on that a lot. Is that if one New Blood game does well, all the others will do well too, because it's just they all help each other out.
Yeah.
But I guess on. Oh, sorry. Continue.
No, go ahead. I have a note for this later.
Yeah, no worries. Sorry, I'm well aware I've not been chatting much in this. I've just actually been enjoying just listening to the story, honestly. But one thing
I talk a lot. If you let me, you have to be careful.
Hey, that's what the podcast is all about, mate. That's what it's all about. I'm sure there are plenty of people. I'm sure there are plenty of fans out there that are appreciating sitting here and just listening to it all. And I'm definitely one of them. But so one of the things that I guess to go on, not to take us on too much of a tangent, but I hear a lot of people, when we talk about old FPS, and by all means, if you're not comfortable answering this question, I totally understand. But
I will answer any and all questions.
Yeah. So there are loads of old FPS that had glory days that these days there's either been a new version that didn't really hit the mark with the old school fan base and stuff like that.
Forever.
I mean, honestly, it is that kind of vein. Another example that is very personal to me is the 2008 release of Turok, which was because on its own, well, the thing about that game, right, was on its own, it was actually a very fun game if you treated it as a standalone FPS. And I actually have very deep roots with like the Xbox 360 multiplayer of that back when I was like a teenager in school. Like, it was a really fun game, but I had to treat it like this ain't a Turok game. I couldn't call it a Turok game. I just called it this fun FPS that I played multiplayer with friends on, because I had fun knife play and the bow was cool, yada yada yada. But if we were to see ever a resurgence, like personally, I've always believed that a team such as yourselves, an old FPS like Turok, if it ever had like some kind of like modern release in some capacity, I would actually trust it in the hands of a team that specializes in retro feeling FPS than a super modern studio that probably would miss those classic elements that make it the game and franchise that we love. So if you could redo any, or at least make a more like a new version of any old FPS in 2021, for example, what game would it be and why?
Okay, so this is going to be a weird answer, but I have thought about this before. Actually, unironically, Daikatana. And my reason is, I have reasons for this, and I think they're good reasons. So first of all, there's most of what Daikatana failed at is a non-issue nowadays. Like all the tech issues with AI and stuff like that, that is an absolute non-issue. You could take those ideas that completely failed back in, what was it, 98, and you could do them now, and like really easily. Second, there's actually a wealth of ideas in that game that would be probably very welcome to people now if they were, in a more modern, polished package that didn't come with all of the stigma. And third, that stigma is a super good marketing tool. Like, if you see an article that's like such and such remaking Daikatana, you're like, what is wrong with them? I need to check this out.
Have they lost their mind?
Yeah, what are they crazy? If you made like a HD remake of Daikatana and it ruled, and it took all those ideas in the original game that were actually good and just didn't get the chance that they needed, I think you'd actually have something pretty cool. And then Probably on a more the more personal choice was like, just for me personally, I would really love to. I don't even know if necessarily work on, but at least see a remaster of Chasm, just because that's such a important, important game. And there's other, like, I feel like a lot of, especially now, a lot of the classics, even lesser known classics, like I was just talking about Doom 64, that just got a really nice, actually, official PC port that's available on Steam. It's like Doom 64 is getting its time in the limelight now, and I think a lot of older titles, in no small part thanks to Night Dive, are getting, that treatment. You're seeing like the Strife remaster happening. You're seeing, well, actually, like you mentioned, Turok. Turok 1 and 2 are on PC and Switch now, and they're
Indeed.
really good ports.
They are fantastic. One thing I've always really wanted to see from them is a Turok Rage Wars with online multiplayer.
Yeah.
That's all I want for Christmas, man.
But like, so honestly, there's a lot of titles that are like getting that, getting their due. It's hard to come up with ones, except for, ones like Daikatana that have this huge stigma, or like Chasm that are just really obscure, that I feel like aren't getting that treatment that, I want to pick as like, this isn't getting the treatment it deserves. But I think those would be my picks.
It's a great idea. It really is.
I remember fielding that to Dave, like when I had like alcohol in me, and was fielding that idea to him over dinner at a convention somewhere or something, and he was just like subtweeting me as I'm telling him. He's like, David is insane, he wants to remake Daikatana. Later I go on Twitter, I'm like, oh hey.
You can just imagine someone after a few drinks coming up to you and be like, you know what, we should Daikatana, we should do that. It's like,
I don't blame him. I probably wasn't a very convincing pitch.
It's like, all right, mate, let's get you to bed.
Yeah, exactly.
Drink some water and we'll get you to bed.
And I kind of, on Twitter, I've kind of made that my meme of sorts. It's like, I'm the guy that likes Daikatana, because I do actually like Daikatana patched without companions, like with all these asterisks. So I've made that sort of that's like the running joke on Twitter, as I'm always like, Daikatana, and everyone's like, oh lord, he's at it again. But completely unironically, that would be my idea.
Yeah.
When I didn't play Dusk until near the end of 2019, I was deep in my Doom Eternal delay depression, as many were. And when that news came out, I was just crushed. I had already built a new computer, everything ready, new desk and everything. Had like a custom made desk, and I was like, man, I need.
That would hurt hard, yeah.
I was like, I need something to hold me over. And right around that time, I had discovered Civi's channel, and so I was looking at a whole bunch of the old stuff, and I went back and played Quake 1, and I got Blood, and it was my first time playing Blood, and I got into Dusk as well, and Dusk just filled that hole in my heart for a good month or two, like I was awesome. I was in the mood for something, and I just found it at just the perfect time, and I think that's probably one of the reasons I love it so much.
That's awesome to hear. It's one of my favorite things to hear, is like people are just like, oh my gosh, this was so, like, this was just filled a hole for me.
It
like,
really
that is
did.
Cool.
It was just that, because that delay was crap. We all knew it was for the best, but I needed something, man. There was nothing else to play.
Right.
There's nothing else to play, so I just like binged a whole bunch of old school style shooters.
Yeah. Ultimately, it was worth the wait, though.
No, absolutely. I guess that shifts us to Doom. How was your first playthrough of Doom Eternal? Like what was your experience with it? What were your thoughts? And
it was glorious. I remember just like playing it and just being like mouth agape. It's like they fixed everything. So I think Doom 2016 is good. I think taken in context, it's like a fantastic reimagining. It's like exactly what needed to happen.
Yeah.
But I've always had some issues with the combat and stuff. And they like fixed all of it in Doom Eternal, like to an insane degree, to like stuff that I was figuring, well, that's never gonna happen. They they brought back enemy prioritization. They brought back having to think about your weapons and how you use them. They brought back like purposeful movement and having to think about how you're moving and everything. And they brought it back in like this new, different, exciting, interesting way that was just like, absolutely insane and crazy fast and stuff. So yeah, I was like super, and I remember like I was getting, I usually try and keep my Twitter account pretty light, because like I don't like getting into actual fights with people. I want it to be sort of an account that is fun for people. That's why I act like a clown on Twitter, is because people enjoy it. I want people to have fun with my account. But like I remember getting into legitimate like arguments with people about Doom Eternal, because like the game I was playing I was just like blown away by. I'm like, this is one of the best shooters I have ever played. And then meanwhile, Doom Eternal released, the discourse is happening of like, oh my gosh, they ruined Doom 2016. And I'm playing, I'm like, no, they like fixed it. They fixed everything. They like, it's like they just improved everything. It's amazing. So yeah, my first playthrough was great. It like destroyed me.
Yes.
By the very end, where it's just like, oh my gosh, how do I get? And then of course Ancient Gods was like, ha, you think that was destruction? Just wait. But yeah, I have nothing but good to say about what they did with Doom Eternal. I think it was a fantastic sequel.
I've just been sinking my teeth into that Super Gornest master level. Like,
Oh,
I know
gosh.
I know that it's definitely, I kind of feel like it wasn't 100% ready. There were obvious bugs in it and stuff like
Yeah.
that. But as a master level, it is just, it almost feels like it's the first time I've played something in Doom Eternal like that feels like an intentionally really hard like fan mod.
Yep.
Like when you jump
Corey
into
does
the
that.
room. Yeah, like when you jump into like my I think it's probably my least favorite arena in the entire game, but I respect what they tried to do. It's the one where almost right at the beginning, it's like the second arena fight where you've got like the million carcasses.
Oh
Like,
yeah,
Just
that little.
fight where it's like
yeah.
Oh,
the shield
gosh,
just
yeah.
never ends. I'm like, this was literally designed by someone that went, you know what? How can I be like the biggest dickhead going? Man, let's just put carcasses everywhere. And when you try and go for those carcasses, tentacles as well. Fuck you. Like,
It's
But it's
it is so obviously just meant to like destroy you mentally.
no meme here. Die. That's it. That's
Yeah,
what the Super
exactly.
Gornest
It's
is.
Literal
it is.
incarnation of that.
Yeah, I'm looking
Yeah,
forward to trying it out when they when sort of the enemy, those kind of like weird triggers, whatever it is that kind of keeps the little ones from spawning for a million years and stuff like that. Hopefully that will get fixed soon.
There's two zombies that keep respawning, and if you wait for them both to be there and you kill them both within a short window, the checkpoint will load.
Excellent.
Ooh.
Thank you for telling me, because I did not know that.
Yeah.
I'm glad I do now.
I got stuck on the same thing the first time. There was always one
Yeah.
like on the top level and the bottom level, so I
Mhm.
killed
I was
one,
there
and then
forever.
one was respawn above, and then I'd kill him, and then he'd move down below. Like, what's going on? I've been here for 10 freaking minutes. Yeah. No, they've really done a good job on that, and that, like, I guess it's just beautiful that they know their audience. They didn't make something easy. They didn't listen to those articles where it's like, this is too hard,
Yeah, they like way doubled down.
Yeah, dude. Even I was surprised. I was like, they wouldn't do that. Like Prote in the community, he made a horde mode, and the stuff that they've done, id Software is like competing with that. Like they obviously saw that and they went, well, this is what the community wants, because they're all streaming it, they're gaming it, they're loving this,
Yeah.
So it's just
Well, I
it's
think
just
they
awesome
know
they're
that-
in tune with it.
Yeah, I think they know that the people who are gonna play DLC for Doom Eternal are gonna want something like that. Like, I don't think they would come out with a Doom Eternal sequel and have it be that ball busting from the start. But although, to be fair, they made Ancient Gods standalone, which is bizarre to me, because if you go into that DLC having never played Doom Eternal, like I don't think you're gonna. I think it's gonna like impossible.
Yeah, it's not going to be a good time.
No, it's not gonna be a good time at all. I actually still haven't beaten the Super Gore Nest master level, and that's just because I guess the only complaint I have about things is I really wish you could save on the master levels.
Oh yeah,
Like,
exit out and come
that's
back
just
later.
because like I have like a wife and 2 kids, and I have limited time to play games, so like I'll be like, okay, time to play the Doom master level. Okay, I'm stuck on the room with 2 cyber demons and a Doom hunter for like 20 minutes. There's all my game time. Great. Get to restart it tomorrow.
The secret I find in that room is you freeze the first one and have all the extra damage, and then when the Doom Hunter appears, you do like the chain gun shield, and then you blood punch him. That's the the 2-piece. That's the 2-piece right there.
That room, so it's insane that I've beaten the base game. I've replayed levels on the base game a few times. I've played at least one of the master levels. I've beaten the DLC, and I'm still learning stuff about basic mechanics.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, it's insane. Like I was like, this room is literally impossible. And so I was talking to some New Blood guys, and they're like, okay, you gotta use Blood Punch. I'm like, really? They're like, yeah, Blood Punch is super powerful. Like, I like never used Blood Punch. Okay, I guess so. My strategy for that turned into kill the first cyber demon really quick with like the Crucible.
Yeah.
Freeze and just spam the next cyber demon with everything I have and hope to kill him as quickly as possible, and then try to kill the Doom Hunter. And it's like, yeah, I'm like still learning stuff and still learning new combinations of stuff too. Like I don't even think you can get away with doing the sticky bomb thing on the cacodemons in Ancient Gods and just having that be your main way of killing them, right? Because I never do that now. I just like, where they swallow the sticky bomb and that puts them into a staggered state. Like, I had people telling me in the base game that it's like, oh, it's too prescriptive. That's the only way to kill cacodemons. I never do that. I use like, I do like meat hook, and then use the ballista, and that like 2 hits them.
Yeah,
and it's
like
way faster.
By level 3, you can do like rocket meat hook super shotgun and kill cacodemons way faster than shooting sticky bombs and waiting. And it's just such a lack of imagination. And
yeah,
I mean, yeah, okay, yeah. In level 1, the best way to kill a cacodemon is a sticky bomb. Yeah, great, because they're trying to show you something. And and there's people who play level 1 and they're like, oh my god, I have to kill cacodemons like this, and then they get bitter for the entire game. It's really weird.
Yeah, the same thing with the chainsaw, where like one of the big complaints on release was everyone was like, oh, I have to chainsaw too often. But what they're doing in the first level is you're intentionally low on ammo because they're teaching you like emergently how to use the chainsaw and what that rhythm is like, and then as you go on, you don't have to chainsaw nearly as much. It's just in that first level where it's like, yeah, you have to chainsaw really frequently because they're teaching you this is important and this is different than how it was in Doom 2016. Because in Doom 2016 it was like a get out of jail free card, and in Eternal it's like, no, this is part of your rhythm, you have to use this.
I think it was good though, like those elements that I think people definitely miss because they kind of want to play it some way, and when the game says, actually we have a very specific set of rules that in turn will actually make you much better at it, but you have to follow them, otherwise sometimes you'll have a rough time, and then some people don't like that because they're like, well, I want to play the game exactly how I want to, even if it's unoptimal. On the subject of cacodemons, I mean, I think the way I would get rid of them is sticky bomb in the mouth or just an arbalist shot. Purely because I think I just played too much battle mode, because that's just how you get rid of them in multiplayer. Because
See, all of us have a different way of dealing with them too. Like there's like creativity and difference in how you deal with stuff. It's just that the underlying rule set has, there are advantages and disadvantages to things. Whereas in Doom 2016, that kind of wasn't the case. And that was one of my main complaints, is like, by the time you get the super shotgun leveled up or whatever, you don't have to engage with anything else. You're just sort of bouncing around using the super shotgun.
With the cacodemons in Doom 2016, when you kill cacodemon, it's just, okay, you killed the cacodemon, right? And that's all it is. And then, of course, in Doom Eternal, you have a Sticky Bomb, which gives you the glory kill. You can do that. You can use the Cacodemons as ways to meat hook into the air to get out of a dangerous situation. You can use the charged Arbalest shot to take down a couple of Cacodemons. You can do a quick precision bolt, quick swap to Ballista, and then go in for a meat hook kill and get armor back. Like there's so many more things that you can do, which so it blows my mind that people say there's only one way to approach it when they intentionally built so many ways to approach it.
Yeah, I think it's the difference between like I said, I think I said this on Twitter, is that when I was talking with you, it's the difference between creativity as expression and creativity as problem solving. Like in Doom 2016, there's a lot of stuff you can do,
yes,
but you don't have to, for the most part. And I can understand if someone really liked that experience of just sort of like chilling out and bouncing around real fast and killing things, they would be disappointed with Eternal, because Eternal is like, no, if you're gonna have to use your creativity and your problem solving for this. You can't just do stuff if you feel like it. You have to like engage with these situations and problem solve it, not just turn your brain on. And I can completely understand if someone doesn't like that experience and feels like that's not what they wanted in a Doom 2016 sequel. That's very fair. I personally love it. That's exactly what I was missing in Doom 2016. And I love that process of having to like think on your feet and combo the stuff together and having it be like this super fast motion chess game. It's really satisfying to me, and I think they really knocked that design out of the park in a way pretty much nothing else has. Like, I think honestly the closest thing to Doom Eternal right now is Ultra Kill, which is a New Blood, or our own game.
Yeah.
It's like this brand new type of character action shooter, which is really cool.
I think there's going to be a lot of people inspired going forward, players and developers alike.
Yeah, I agree. And probably at some point it's gonna peak. It's gonna get to a point where it's like, okay, we've seen this style of, like everything. You get to a point where it's like, okay, we've seen a bunch of games doing this. Let's do something else now. But man, it's just it's such a crazy new breath of fresh air at this point. And I think Doom Eternal is going to remain probably the high watermark for that sort of thing, at least for a while. Like I said, there's just so much to learn and try about it, and even going in for the DLC and like master level updates, you're still learning. You're still like finding new strategies and getting better at the game. And the fun part is that it's not just difficulty to be difficult, and it's like you're supposed to enjoy it being difficult, and that's all the fun. It's that it's difficult because it's teaching you new stuff, and when you learn that new stuff, it makes the game more fun. Like it's like the better you get at the game, the more fun it becomes.
Yeah, because awesome. I hear that sometimes that Doom Eternal is at the point where it's just being difficult for the sake of difficult, and I just disagree. I feel that when the game is throwing something at you, then that stops you for a while, that maybe you end up spending 10 minutes, 15 minutes in a room, that it's because it's throwing something at you that you haven't had to deal with yet, right? Mm-hmm. Like, oh my god, I haven't had to deal with a room that throws 10 buffed gargoyles at me in a wave, right? Oh my god, I've never been locked in a room with a tyrant, a doom hunter, and 2 carcasses. Like I've never fought 2 marauders on a toxic waste river. It's like, and I don't know, I find that so fresh because I've got like 600 something hours in this game over the year. I play it a lot. I've shown it to people. I talk about it all the time, and they keep putting stuff out that just kind of throws me off. I'm like, oh wait, okay, the rhythm that I've had for the past couple rooms isn't working here. Maybe I need to approach it differently. And I don't see that as being hard just to be hard. I find that as a way to keep things fresh and interesting. Yeah,
I completely agree. I mean, there's definitely a smirk.
Oh yeah, there's some trolly stuff in there.
Yeah, they're very but it's like...
But the original games have trolly stuff in it too.
Oh, very much. Yeah, it's very... Like, honestly, the Ancient Gods is like one of the most authentic retro
expansion
packs you could possibly do, because it's just like like Plutonia or something, where it's just evil. Yeah, I don't actually like hard for its own sake. Like I don't enjoy that. But I appreciate it in Doom Eternal because it doesn't feel like it's just the difficulty and the frustration is supposed to be the fun. It's that the frustration is only there when you have to get out of your comfort zone and adapt, and when you get out of there and adapt and learn this new thing, you gain this like new sense of like the flow of the combat and you know, your ability to like master it, and it feels great.
Yeah, no, it's it doesn't feel like a cop out difficulty where it's just punishing you for the sake of it. Like everything's before you. I do feel like there's a couple moments that do feel like a John Romero monster closet.
Oh yeah, definitely.
You know, and like if you played through his recent sigil, there's a real tight room with a staircase, and you open up this brown door, and there's 2 barons of hell behind it. There's a freaking this room that tilts me, man. On the first playthrough, after it, you kind of learn a trick for it. Sorry, a bit of a tangent, but I love the whole DLC, but there's one room. So it's in the first map. You're going underwater, and you go through this corridor, and it leads you up into this like cylinder elevator that takes you up to 2 wall platforms.
Oh, the Revenants.
Yeah, and you got the 2 Revenants, and then the 2 towers, the 2 turrets next to them. Mm-hmm. And like on the first time you jump up, and if you're playing Nightmare or worse of all like Ultra Nightmare, you just climb up this thing, and they're just so rewarding, man.
You just turn around and you just jump and fly free. Like, now I'm jumping this way, and 2 Revenants.
That was mean, man. There was just nothing. Keep your heads up on that.
One thing that has gotten really good with the DLC and the master levels is that they've really figured out how enemies function, because Revenants in the base game are kind of a joke, right?
Basically,
you just you kill them, whatever. There's a Revenant over there, but now they'll do things like that. They'll put 2 Revenants right in your way when you're trying to jump on a ledge, or like in the master level. In that, you know, when you go through the teleporter and you go out into the open lava area with all the broken platforms, and then you have to go on the monkey bars to jump up across, and then there's the archvile. There's like 3 Revenants just like camped up there, just spamming you with rockets. And like the DLC and especially the master level have really like made me like hate Revenants, when I never did before. And that's a good feeling, where I see a Revenant now and I'm like, oh god, I hate those guys, and I actually start targeting their weapons, which I never did before.
Oh, that's me with carcasses. I have so much hatred for carcasses. They are just, and I didn't feel that in the base game. Yeah, because the base game, it was like, oh yeah, I'll pop the shield and kill. This is, well, I mean, in the master level, they have that, you know, that whole room just filled with them, and you can like barely move.
They have figured out a great chemistry lately between tyrants and carcasses.
Yeah, it's the worst, best chemistry.
They are best friends.
They really are, and it's so bad for the player. Like, oh no. But the funny thing is, I've only, even with like the carcasses, like them just like spamming them in that one room or whatever, I have only really had maybe once or twice at most where I felt like I honestly just got boxed in and couldn't do anything. Like it seems like somehow you always feel like, okay, I'm surrounded by these walls and I can't, but there's always like some way I can move. They're like, you know, forcing you to think about your movement. There's only ever, for me at least, there's only ever been a few times where I felt like they honestly just sort of like locked me in.
Right. And in those cases, when you go back and look at it, you'll be like, oh wait, I did just stand on the bottom floor for 20 seconds and I should have gone upstairs or something like that. But you can definitely end up in a situation where you've put yourself in a spot where you're going to be screwed.
That's actually something that I think is another improvement from 2016, where at least me personally, I died a lot in Doom 2016 and I had no idea what I did wrong. I think some of it is that I honestly tried to play Doom 2016 more like Doom Eternal, even before Doom Eternal was a thing. Like, I was trying to switch weapons and, prioritize enemies and stuff, and I would just, like, die. And, like, I don't know why I died or what I was doing wrong. It's just a Hell Knight came up behind me that I didn't know was there, and now I'm dead. I never have that happen in Eternal. Like, every time I die, I know exactly why I died. It's like, okay, I spent too much time in this part and I got swamped with these enemies that I know are really good at swamping you and mean that you need to keep moving. I should have kept moving better, or stuff like that.
That was definitely Mayo having a drink right as that question ended, wasn't it? I heard that. I heard that.
Hey, man.
I was like, when did he? Oh no! My God! So right as it ended, Spud was muted and didn't realize it, and then I was waiting for Mayo to segue into the next thing, and I hear slurp.
I was wondering, I'm like, is everyone just waiting for everyone else? Did I say something really bad and I didn't know it?
The Discord call just ends.
Yeah.
What?
Bloody hell!
Where do you? This is a bit of a broad question, but after, I know you kind of answered it in a way, not long ago, but generally speaking, with the current climate of AAA games, and after Doom Eternal, where do you predict? I'm just curious if you have any predictions where the mainstream can go, because to me personally, not to answer my own question, for me personally, it feels like the paradigm shifts so fast now. You know how, like, in the past it would just be like constant Call of Duty shooters or whatever, but if you think of like Fall Guys and then Among Us, and it's like there's all these indie games with different ideas popping up out of nowhere. Do you see like a trajectory in AAA following the indie scene with all these recent events? If that made sense, that question was a bit all over the shop. But
I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
So I've never worked in AAA or anything close. Like, I am entirely an indie guy. So anything that I say about the AAA industry is entirely like from the outside, just guessing. But I feel like AAA has gotten to the point now where they're unable to chase trends in that way. The best they can do is to take elements from trends happening in indie and higher tier indie, which is really what AA used to be in the past. Things like Devolvers, like Crow Team, I guess. Those sort of devs where it's like those are really AA devs, not really indie. But the trends that tend to happen like indie and the stuff, I don't think AAA is really able to chase them. The best they're able to do is to look at them and integrate elements of that into their existing giant design. Like, if you look at AAA games, they have not moved much at all in, the past probably decade. The big publishers are basically doing the same sort of game. There's, Assassin's Creed likes is coming out, and you have the big multiplayer focused war shooters, and then you have Bethesda doing their own thing. Honestly, Bethesda gets a lot of hate, and some of it's justified, but they actually have a pretty decent track record when it comes to publishing stuff that isn't just cookie cutter, money makers, for the most part. It's like Doom Eternal, the Wolfenstein games, even their own Fallout games are all kind of different than what you get from other AAA publishers, which is cool. But yeah, I think it's just the costs for making a AAA game are so high, and the resources are needed are so high. It's like they can't devote that to chasing a trend. They have to just look at, okay, what are the trends? How can we integrate that into an open world Assassin's Creed or into a games as a service game or that sort of thing. So yeah, I don't know. I don't really see, honestly, AAA moving that much in, from these indie zeitgeists. I think the most you're going to see is, like I said, just elements taken and put into sort of their existing paradigms.
Are you muted again, Spud?
God damn it! Yeah, getting what? Oh man, I do it because I'm just very rattly around my workstation, so I didn't want to get it pick up on the mic.
That's fair.
What do you call it? Yeah, no, nailed it, man. I was gonna say I'd handle it to Mayo because my cheeky list of questions are pretty done. Unless I know it's on the spot, but if you do Dust 2, can I get early access as a streamer? You know what I'm saying? Could you hook me up? But yeah, outside of that,
we'll probably do it if Dusk 2 happens. We'll probably do an early access model so you can get it in that way.
Sweet. Just cut that bit out, Mayo. No one heard that.
No, but Spud wants to feel special, man. Yeah, it is.
No, I mean, I'll cut that out, and then I'm gonna put that out. I'm gonna front load the podcast with that. That's how we're opening.
Oh man, that'll be the cold open.
Or both times he's muted and doesn't know it.
Damn it.
Or the slurp. Either way.
No, take it away, Mayo. Otherwise, yeah, that's my it's been pretty enlightening for me, man.
Yeah, this has been really
I like
cool.
your approach, man.
Thank you.
Yeah, I don't really have any other topics to hit. I think we've had a really good conversation. I'm sure later in the day I'll be like, oh man, I should have asked him this, but
yeah, that always happens. It's in the moment you forget.
It could be like Joe Rogan. You can get him on in 6 months or another year when he's on tour again.
Hey.
Got the next game out to promote.
I mean, sure. I'm pretty much always up for doing things. Yeah, I'm pretty much always up for doing podcasts and stuff. My life isn't very eventful. It's mostly just family stuff and game dev. So.
Oh, I got a question. The Dusk poster, right?
Yeah.
Is there any way to get that in a classic movie size, like movie poster size, like you would see in theaters? Because you only have the two sizes, and then movie poster sizes is bigger. It's 71 centimeters by 40 or something like that. And my bedroom has 6 framed movie posters, and I want that Dusk poster, but it's not the right size. What can we do about this?
Okay. I can ask Dave, maybe. I'll run it by him. He does all the merch stuff. So
okay, awesome.
I'll ask him. What was the size? It's just classic movie poster size.
Movie poster dimensions. What is it? It's 27 by 40 inches.
27 by 40 inches.
Yes.
I'll
and I think the largest one you have is 36, and that tends to be what people are making posters in these days. But you go into a movie theater and they have a whole bunch of framed posters up there for the upcoming attractions. Those are all 27 by 40, and those are all my movie posters are that size. And I don't want Dusk to be the small one.
I just shot him a message.
I used to have a Mortal Kombat 2 not movie but game poster, and then the frame fell off the ground, the poster broke. And so I know, man. I had a framed poster of the dragon symbol in the clouds with the lightning, and it said "You are not ready."
Nice.
It was so awesome, and it's screwed. And I thought Dusk could take its place, but I need that size, man.
Yeah, we'll see. Maybe. I think. I mean, there's all the different concerns about making merch.
Sure. I mean, I'm not seriously asking, but I am half asking.
If it's something that one person wants, it could be that a bunch of people want that, and we just don't know.
Maybe.
So always worth asking.
Hell yeah. Well, David, this has been an absolute pleasure. This is definitely the biggest guest we've had on the show so far, so I'm sure we're all a bit starstruck.
Well, hopefully it's just the start of big guests.
Oh yeah, I mean, we've not crapping on our other guests. We've had great people on this and had great conversations, but we've never had a game developer on here, so this has been pretty great, and I think a good moment for the show.
Yeah, no problem. I just had to give up sleep. It's fine.
Yeah, sorry, man. Sorry.
That's fine.
Hope it was well worth it. I thoroughly enjoyed sitting here and just kind of listening to the tale. It's been a really nice, chill discussion.
Yeah,
it was quite fun. I mean, I always enjoy getting to talk. So, like I said, the problem is making sure I don't go off on tangents and talk for too long.
Oh, man.
I'm all for it. I mean, the passion comes out. Clearly you're passionate about what you do, and that's reflected in the quality of your games. So congratulations for Dusk's success, and thank you for joining us. It's been a really fun time.
Yes, thank you for having me.
All right. So anyone want to plug anything before we go?
Just, my name's Spud Hunter. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment. I stream Spuddy FPS games, and I'm loud, and da-da-da. And
Sorry for
over to you,
interrupting
Ketchup.
your stream, man. Spud was streaming. I went into his chat, and I'm like, hey.
I am a professional. I just lost time, all right, track of time, because it is 2020, and it's all relative, okay?
Sure.
The clock is just an illusion.
Man, it really
over
is.
to you, Ketch.
Time just doesn't exist anymore.
No, not at all.
All right.
I have Twitter at @DuskDev if anyone wants to follow me. And you can pretty much find all my other links there in a pinned tweet. So,
Dude, on Twitter, see, because I follow you there, and I
sorry.
didn't know that you followed me, or I don't know if you do on there, but I posted something about one of the tongue-in-cheek complaining about Dead Space, and you made that response to me, because it was a joke about Doom Eternal, and I was like, oh my god, the creator of Dusk responded to one of my tweets. Oh, I got to jump on this. Will you come on our show?
Yeah, the good initiative. You always want to jump on that.
Hell yeah, man, it was great.
It's really weird whenever it's honestly really weird when people like see me as a big celebrity. Like, what?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's important to people, like the creator of something that they love, especially when it comes to. I mean, it's not like you made a toaster. You made a great video game that people. It's art, that people love. So it's gonna happen.
It is admittedly really fun to be able to like drop into someone's thread and it makes their day.
Yeah.
Just like, hi. They're like, oh my gosh, that's really or being able to like find like a cool indie shooter that no one is talking about and then just be able to like retweet it and have their account start blowing up. That's really cool.
That's awesome. I do want to plug, I have a new video that just went up today. It is a video speculating on possibilities for the return of the Chain Gunner in Doom Eternal. So guys, go check that out. There's a whole bunch of ideas that me and some people in my Discord have had of how that enemy could function. Yeah, go check that out. It's pretty cool. Ketchup, anything coming up?
Actually, it's completely unrelated to Doom or FPS, but this week there is a major offline Mortal Kombat 11 tournament. So if anyone follows competitive fighting games,
Really?
Mustard and myself will be. Yeah, there's an event in Ukraine. It's an invitational. They've obviously been as safe as possible.
Sure.
And they've actually allowed Mustard and I to commentate remotely, because we're not able to travel at the moment. But it's a big tournament, $60,000. A bunch of the best players.
Damn, a $60,000 in-person Ukrainian Mortal Kombat 11 tournament.
That's not how I thought the year would end, yet here we are.
Where can they watch?
Is the year of surprises.
Where can we watch that?
I believe, I could be wrong. I believe it's on the We Play channels on Twitch. You will be able to find it just through the Twitch directory starting Thursday. And that's pretty much the rest of my week. So
Dude, I will be watching that. Keep an eye on chat, man. I'll come in and say
yeah,
hi.
man. We've got Ultimate now. Ultimate's come out, so we've got all the new. Again, this is clearly unrelated to FPS. So sorry, folks. It's been it's a fun time. Ultimate. I've got my boy Rain back. I'm happy.
Are you playing Rain?
Yeah, man. He's my main now.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I will be watching that for sure. I haven't watched a good tournament in a long time.
Yeah, it's going to be a real good one. We've got a nice mix of players from all kinds of different countries and stuff like that. So
they just had a revival tournament of Marvel vs. Capcom 3 like a week.
I saw that on Twitch. Dude, yeah, Twitch Rival.
It was insane, man. Like I'm not a Marvel player, but I miss watching those tournaments. It was really fun. All right, everyone. So thanks so much for listening. Thank you, David, for joining us. I'm going to hit stop on the record here. And everyone, check out everybody's channels here. I'll link them below. And we'll see you in the next episode. Bye, everyone.
Peace.